Hi everyone, this is Kate Barford in Melbourne, Australia, and I'm an apprentice in the Art2Ride Associate Trainer program. I'm sharing this video with you today to update you on the progress of my horse, Danny Boy. He is a 18-year-old Arabian, coming up on 19 pretty soon. I also want to share some tips for lunging and some of the things that I've learned recently in my practice with this horse. And I'd also like to discuss a bit of how I can tell that my horse is over his back when I'm working him on the lunge line, because I think that there are some good examples of that in this video. So as far as the progress of this horse goes, this horse has been doing Art2Ride for 9 months. He's starting to find the stretch in the walk more quickly on the lunge line, although it still takes a good bit of time to get him fully over his back on the lunge. Sometimes it can take about 10 minutes to get into his first deep stretch. Often he needs to relieve himself at some stage, and after that he gets a lot more fluid and is able to get over his back more. And it also just takes time for us at this stage to find the right sort of contact and to get him warmed up. I do typically do about 15 minutes of work in hand prior to this, so he does a very good job in work in hand and getting over his back. I do find it a little bit more difficult to find the right contact on the lunge line than I do in work in hand, but as you'll see by the end of this video, he gets into a really nice place. And I'm really happy with where we get to by the end of our lunging sessions, even though it can take us a little while to get into it. I feel that his top line is developing really nicely. His progress hasn't necessarily been in a straight line. For example, recently I tried some canter work with him, and he went a bit sore, so I took things back to the beginning, and I've been building him back up for about a month at this stage. But in that month, I feel like we've taken things to another level that we weren't at before. So it can sometimes be a blessing to take a step backwards and fine-tune the basics. Just watching this briefly, one thing I could be doing better to help him find the stretch a little bit quicker is to actually get a little closer to him to try and establish that contact and influence him a bit more. Typically when I do that is when he does find that first stretch. However, my thoughts on lunging currently are that it's a fantastic way to observe the horse. I send the horse out on the line and observe what he does, and then I slowly suggest changes that he can make over time. I try to avoid doing any big corrections or forcing him into the stretch by pulling on the contact too much, as that actually tends to make it take longer for him to truly get over his back. I believe that correct lunging has a lot to do with body position, the position of your body relative to the horse, that is. Throughout this video, you'll notice that the best work Danny does is when my body position is near the back of his ribs. When I'm there, the lunge line is sort of at an upward angle, more like a rein, rather than coming straight from his mouth. And this makes it much easier to soften the horse. I'm also in a better position to use my whip to influence his hind end when I'm there. The horse may try to get you out of this body position by slowing down or speeding up if he realizes that that's where you're the most effective. Essentially, in order to get into this position, I need to make sure that the horse is moving in front of my whip. Just like the first thing I do when I ride is to try to get the horse moving in front of my leg. So I need his energy flowing out in front of me. So that's the first thing I focus on. Also, when I'm in this position, the horse's eye is drawn backwards towards me, and it creates a subtle flexion, which helps keep his front end on the same circle as his hind end. It's very important to turn your body to keep up with the horse and keep turning your body so that you stay in this position. It's really easy to get left behind. I also first focus on getting longitudinal flexion. This means getting the horse to engage his core and lift up his back. This is the action that will start to develop the top line muscles that we need in order to ride the horse. When the horse lifts his core and engages his back, it opens up space between his vertebrae, and lateral flexion becomes much easier. So I don't ask for much lateral flexion until I can achieve longitudinal flexion. The way that I achieve longitudinal flexion is by asking the horse to go straight. When he lines up his whole body from his tail to his nose, he will come into the stretch and lift his back. The contact can be used to keep the head in between the front two legs. So rather than thinking about wanting to bring the head down or bring the head towards me, I think about keeping the head in between the front two legs, so the horse is looking where he's going. If the shoulder is coming too far in on the circle, I can use my body by stepping towards the horse's shoulder, and he will move the shoulder out. If the hind end is too far in on the circle, I can use my whip in time with the inside hind leg to ask him to step the hind end out. I first work my horse on a square, trying to give him time to go straight so that he can achieve this longitudinal flexion. I also like to ask for shoulder 4 on the square by asking the horse to step his hind end away and by drawing his front end towards me slightly so that he engages his inside hind. In this way, the horse can get engaged one hind leg at a time. Funnily, while the longitudinal flexion makes the lateral flexion easier, sometimes asking for a bit of lateral, like the shoulder 4, will help to achieve the longitudinal flexion. When the horse steps the inside hind under the body, the pelvis rotates and the core and back lift, creating more space to achieve true bend. Once I'm happy that the horse is working well from behind, then I will focus on the contact. The contact stays steady when the horse lifts the head, and as he comes down, it becomes very soft, like holding hands with a loved one. When the horse is over his back, the contact is truly a lovely feeling. The subtlest move will influence the horse, and similarly, the whip aid can be very subtle once the horse is over his back. This is one way that I can tell the horse is over his back, is by the soft feel of the contact in my hand and how easy it is to ask for bend and changes. Another way I can tell is by how consistent the contact becomes and how easy it is for me to stay in the relative position to the horse that I want to be. The horse isn't speeding up or slowing down, he is maintaining a steady rhythm, and he is easily staying on the circle without wanting to pull out or come in. This is how you know he is balanced and connected from tail to nose. I can also tell by the horse's movement. Nothing looks stuck. Everything looks like it is flowing from the hind legs to the nose. Once I get that freedom of movement, then I can start to ask the horse to really reach even deeper with the hind legs and open up more. That's when the movement becomes truly beautiful, and those are the steps that really build muscle. Finally, I can tell he is over his back by how consistent his posture becomes. He really becomes locked into the stretch and can maintain it for several circles consistently, not just for certain parts of the circle. Okay, now I will observe the video and tell you what I see. I think this is where he was having a little bit of a coughing fit, but I was really happy with the transition from walk to trot that he did a few moments ago. That's a huge improvement for him, and that's only been starting to happen recently to where we can get a walk to trot transition like that. And I've learned to try and time when I ask with when he's picking up his inside hind leg, and that really makes a big difference in the transition. So we can observe some of the things here that I was saying about how you can tell when a horse is over his back. He's staying on the circle without too much help from me. I'm not needing to pull on the line to keep him on the circle. You can tell from the look of the line how soft the feel is. It's very easy for me to communicate with the hind end when he's over his back like that with the whip. Just really subtle changes. Like there, I tried to push his hind end out. He's on a little bit of a shoulder 4 there. And
it's very easy to ask him to do that when he's over his back, whereas when he's not, it can be challenging. So we've lost that nice feel there for a minute. You can see I'm kind of having to move the line quite a bit to try and reestablish that feel, and how the circle's gone a bit wonky. And here he's getting back over his back again. You could see how his movement freed up a little bit more for a moment. There, that's really nice. And you can see how I'm getting out in front of him a little bit. I'm not where I want to be at his ribs. Now I am, and you can see that I'm not blocking his forward movement when I'm there. When I get out in front of him, or when he kind of slows down on me, I end up blocking his forward movement with my body position. Okay, so now he's starting to lock in a little bit, and I was pleased with that. Just wanted to do a little bit of walk work there at the end after the trot, because that's usually when he does his nicest walk work with the most activity, is after the trot. Okay, so from this opposite side, we can observe everything right from the beginning. I spend a moment with him quite close to me, seeing if I can establish that nice contact, and then I send him out on the line. Apologies for the vertical video. It will switch to horizontal in just a moment, but I wanted you to be able to see this side from the beginning. Okay, so I'm sending him forward a lot. You can see that I'm trying to get into that body position where I'm more at his ribs so that I can influence him more easily. There we go, that's better. You can see that when I'm in that position, I'm not doing as much. We can just sort of flow together. Like there, I'm just turning my body and I can keep up with him more easily. But when I get in front of him, the contact is actually out in front of him, and I almost feel like when I keep the contact there, it's almost like I'm pulling him forward a little bit, which I don't want. I try to mostly send him forward with the whip so that I can get back into that body position where I want to be. But if the contact is ahead of me, then that's where the contact is, and I have to keep it regardless of whether it's where I want to be or not. Just like when we're riding, we might widen our hands to maintain the contact, and no, we're not in the perfect position like we would want to be in a show, but we're training. So you can see here, he's not over his back. He looks quite stiff. I'm doing a lot of work. I'm trying to get him that energy flowing out in front of me. Now I'm in a better body position, but he's still not quite finding the contact. I'm still doing a lot of work to send him forward. You can see that whip going a lot. And I'm walking towards him a lot to keep him out on the circle, because usually before he gets over his back, he either wants to pull out on the circle or come in on the circle. Sending him forward again, he's really stalling there. And there's something released right there. You can see how his movement started to free up. There he goes. Now he's looking much more free in his movement. His hind end is reaching under him further. That's another thing you can look at. You can look at the triangle that's formed by the hind end and how large it gets. how far under the body the hind end is reaching is a good indication of whether they're getting over their back or not. But also if it's stiff, sometimes with this horse, it looks like he's reaching quite far under the body, but the legs are still very stiff. And he's really only over his back when he gets loose, like he is getting there. And I know that because if I ask him for lateral flexion, if I ask him to bend or to step under himself, when he's stiff, he can't do it. And that's how I know he's not really engaged. But here, I would say that contact probably felt really nice. And everything looks really loose there. He could be a little bit more just locked into it. And the circle's not, that's even better. I was going to say the circle's a bit wonky. He's not making that perfect circle just yet like he does when he's over his back. But that's getting even better there. I'm still having to put in a bit of effort to keep him out in front of me. I'm pushing his hind out there to try and activate him by getting that inside hind leg under him a little bit more. So I think I'm kind of trying for that shoulder fore on the square thing that I was talking about earlier. Which you can kind of see quite nicely here. And hopefully you'll see that putting him in that bit of a shoulder fore helps. Helps to get him that little bit more engaged. Like he is there. That's really beautiful. So that trot transition wasn't as good as the one on the other side. But I did spend more time in the walk on the other side. So he had more time to open up. I probably should have let him settle into that last little bit of flowing walk that he had there for a little longer before I sent him into the trot. So we can observe all the same things in the trot as we observed in the walk. The circle here is a little wonky. You can see he's pulling out on the circle a bit there. I'm trying to push his hind end out and get him more into a shoulder fore on the circle. And I'm trying to maintain that body position where I'm at his ribs. So I'm having to send him forward quite a bit to get him out in front of me. There, he comes out in front of me there, and the trot starts to look a bit better. It's not quite there yet, but I can tell he's trying to sort out his balance. He's thinking about what he needs to do to get to that place where everything is just easy for him. And that's what I'm trying to help him find. You can see as he comes in front of that camera there how nicely his neck muscles really are developing. And we're working out in a paddock. There are holes, there's cow manure, there's obstacles that he needs to navigate, and sometimes he trips, but he tends to find his balance again quite quickly afterwards when we're doing this work. It was quite a windy day as well, which makes it harder to maintain the contact. And having these front boots really boosted his confidence out here with the tripping. He used to be a bit worried by it, but he doesn't seem to worry about it when he has these boots on. Okay, so asking him to step that inside hind leg under himself and trying to draw his eye back towards me to get the front end more on the circle. There we go. That looks nice right there. Just everything looks lined up from the tail to the nose, and see how the circles become more regular already. It's actually getting some nice hock movement there, which is new for this horse. And look how much less work I'm doing now. It's so much easier to influence him when he's over his back. Getting a bit irritated by flies, I think. So there were some really nice moments there where the contact was nice and soft and he was really locked in, despite all the little challenges of tripping and bugs and being in a paddock. And then the walk work after the trot is always very enjoyable for me. I often try to ask for a little bit of lateral work after the trot. I don't know if I do here, but that's something I like to do. And again, once he gets into that flowing place where he's over his back in either the walk or the trot, that's when I really try to ask him to push himself and open up and make that stride even longer and stretch those hind legs even further under his body. And that's where we end the session. Thank you so much for watching. Again, this is Kate Barford in Melbourne, Australia.